For most of the 19th century, the Auckland Islands were a trap that looked like land. A dark shape in the Southern Ocean. Cliffs, peat, wet grass, and wind that never seemed to stop moving. Sailors didn't describe them as a destination. They described them as an ending. And in 1864, 2 ships were ended here within months of each other. 2 separate disasters, close enough in time that the survivors were alive at the same moment, on the same island, yet never knew it. One group lasted 19 months and every man survived. The other lasted about a year and almost everyone died. Same climate. Same coastline. Same cold. What changed was the human structure placed on top of it. The Auckland Islands sit far south of New Zealand. In the zone where storms do not pass through, they occupy. The air is saturated. The ground is saturated. Clothes remain wet until they rot. There is no clean line between day and night that offers comfort. You wake up damp, work damp, sleep damp. And the wind works on you like a slow tool, constantly removing heat from your body, constantly pushing exhaustion deeper into your muscles. In that environment, survival isn't about toughness. It's about systems. On January 3, 1864, a small schooner called the Grafton wrecked in Carnley Harbor on Auckland Island. She was not a warship, not a famous vessel, just a working schooner with 5 men aboard. The kind of ship you wouldn't expect history to care about. 5 men. Small enough that every personality matters. Small enough that one bad decision can end the entire group. They reached shore and did what castaways always do at first. They searched the wreck for anything that could be converted into time. Because supplies isn't a romantic word in the subantarctic. It means fire. It means shelter. It means a knife that cuts cleanly instead of tearing flesh and wasting calories. They salvaged timber and iron. They dragged what they could away from the tide. And they built a hut from the wreckage, a deliberate structure instead of a temporary lean-to, because they understood something early. The Auckland Islands don't reward improvisation for long. The hut became more than a roof. It became a point on the map where routine could attach itself. And routine is what keeps panic from becoming leadership. Days on Auckland Island are not measured by sunlight. They are measured by tasks. Fetch fuel. Maintain fire. Repair shelter. Search for food when the weather allows it. Dry whatever can be dried. Reseal whatever can be sealed. Nothing is ever finished. Everything decays. This is where many castaway stories collapse into montage. Men suffering vaguely, days passing in quick narration. But the men of the Grafton didn't survive because time passed. They survived because they made time useful. They improved their shelter. They shaped their environment. They kept a fire alive and guarded it like it was a living thing because it was. In wet cold like this, fire is not comfort. It is infrastructure. Food existed, but it was never guaranteed. There were seabirds, seals, and what the coast gave up in brief windows when the weather calmed. But the real danger was what hunger does to thinking. Hunger doesn't just weaken the body. It narrows the mind. It makes people reactive. It makes tomorrow feel like an abstraction. So they built a system that forced tomorrow to be real. They divided labor. They kept tools from vanishing into personal ownership. They made decisions that favored the group over the moment. And the months began to stack. A year passed, and no ship arrived. That's the quiet horror of remote islands. You can do everything right and still be invisible. Your signal smoke can rise into fog and never be seen. Your footprints can be erased by rain and wind as if you were never there. Eventually, the Grafton men faced a truth that most castaways learn too late. Waiting is not a plan. A year became 18 months. The hut wore down. The men wore down. And then 3 of them made a decision that bordered on impossible. They would leave the island in a small boat they modified themselves and attempt to reach Stewart Island, hundreds of kilometers away. This wasn't a heroic moment with swelling music. It was math. You cannot out-endure an environment that erodes everything you own, including your body. Eventually, the cost of staying becomes higher than the risk of leaving. So they prepared the boat like craftsmen, because craftsmanship is what you do when your life depends on the integrity of wood and rope. And then, in July of 1865, 3 men left the Auckland Islands and pushed into open ocean. The Southern Ocean is not the kind of water you cross. It's the kind of water you negotiate with. It allows you through or it doesn't. They reached Stewart Island after days at sea, exhausted, damaged, but alive. And now they faced another choice. They could accept survival as a personal achievement, or they could complete it as a collective one. They raised funds. They organized a rescue mission. They returned to Auckland Island to retrieve the 2 men left behind. And they succeeded. 19 months after the wreck, the entire crew of 5 was alive. That's the part people like to remember. But it is only half of what happened that year. Because 4 months after the Grafton wrecked, another ship was destroyed on the same island. Her name was Invercald, a much larger vessel, with 25 crew aboard. She struck Auckland Island in May of 1864 and broke up quickly. 19 men made it ashore. 19 men sounds like an advantage. More hands. More strength. More potential for organization. But large groups do not automatically become communities. They become whatever their internal structure allows. The Invercald survivors were battered, injured, and nearly stripped of equipment. They recovered only small amounts of food. They had timber enough to build a rough shelter. They had matches, which meant they had fire, at least at first. And then the provisions ran out. At that point, survival becomes social. Not in an uplifting way. In a blunt way. Who controls the remaining resources? Who decides how risk is taken? Who keeps routine alive when despair is easier? This is where the 2 stories begin to diverge sharply. The Grafton men built a system early, and protected it. The Invercald men entered scarcity without stable leadership, and scarcity began to lead instead. In a place like Auckland Island, the environment strips away performance. You don't get to pretend you are someone else for long. Cold exposes weakness. Hunger exposes selfishness. Wet darkness exposes how thin social order can be when consequences arrive every hour. Over months, the Invercald group shrank. Some died from exposure. Some from injury that couldn't heal. Some from starvation's slow mechanics. And as the number dropped, the survivors' world narrowed into something even worse. A tiny, brittle society where every person becomes either an ally, a threat, or a burden. At least one surviving account records a descent into acts that people prefer to believe are impossible until the body proves otherwise. Starvation-driven breakdown, violence, and cannibalism after a death in their shelter. The detail is remembered decades later not because it was sensational, but because it never stopped being horrifying. Auckland Island didn't force that outcome like a hand. It allowed it like a vacuum. When food is absent and routine is absent and trust is absent, the mind begins to rewrite the rules. And the cruel part is this. The Invercald survivors were not inherently worse men than the Grafton crew. They were humans placed inside a pressure chamber without the stabilizers that keep humans human. After roughly a year, only 3 Invercald crewmen remained alive. They were found when a passing ship sent a boat ashore to obtain repairs and encountered them. Alive but barely. So here is the uncomfortable comparison. 5 men, 19 months, all survived. 19 men, about a year, 3 survived. Same island. Same wind. Same cold. What changed was the structure people built. The Grafton crew treated survival like a project. Daily, repetitive, disciplined. They fought entropy the way you fight a flood. Not with hope, but with constant labor. The Invercalled crew drifted into survival as reaction. And reaction is never sustainable in the long term. This is why the Auckland Islands are not just a shipwreck story. They are a study in social physics. Leadership isn't charisma here. It's continuity. Routine isn't boredom here. It's protection. And community isn't sentiment here. It's the only technology humans have for surviving environments bigger than the individual. The Auckland Islands still sit there now, wet, isolated, patient. The sea still strikes the coast with the same force. The wind still erases tracks. And the island still makes the same argument it made in 1864. Land does not equal safety. Only structure does. If stories like this hold you, stories where survival is not heroic but mechanical, consider supporting the channel. Like the video, subscribe, and join us for more true stories of endurance, resilience, and the quiet decisions that decide whether people live or disappear.